All right. Doing this again, another improv story. As usual, I'm just going to jump right into it. Only edits are going to be me, just quality of life editing. Looks like today's words are going to be pest, shoulder, insistence, suburb, and belt. So without further ado, here's a story about whatever that is. Let's see. Let's go with a female name this time. All right. Charlotte lived a pretty basic life. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with her mom and her dad and her little brother. And every day she went to school just like every other kid on the block. Everybody had walked together, gather up right outside the apartment building. There was 4 other kids that went to her same school in that one building. Everybody was pretty close-knit. There wasn't much of a need to be so distant. Everybody kind of knew everyone, and luckily there wasn't any shady behavior going on in the cul-de-sac at the time, so everybody was able to get pretty familiar with each other. Now, what Charlotte had noticed was all of her friends had something that made them really special. Some of her friends were really good at sports. The other ones were always really good at just talking to people. Some of them were far better at talking to people than others, and she always felt like she kind of wanted to just be left alone. But she always felt good with animals. Charlotte thought, wouldn't it be fantastic if what I was good at was animals? And so she decided, I think I want to be some sort of animal trainer, or maybe a vet. And she discussed this with her friends as she walked to work the next day. Work? She better not be walking to work. Kids in school. All right, rewind. She discussed this with her friends as she was walking to school the next day. Her friend Amanda told her, that's a really good idea. You've always really liked animals. Do you have any pets? And Charlotte paused for a second. She said, no, I don't have any pets. I was always just really good with the squirrels and the birds when we went camping. Peter spoke up, always one to throw his opinion in the ring. I think you should go find a pet. Amanda kind of looked at him and said, Peter, you can't just go find a pet. You have to actually adopt them. Charlotte turned to him and said, yeah, that's right, actually. There's certain things you have to do, like getting them tags and getting them all vaccinated against the different diseases like rabies. And Peter said, no. Just go find one. Just a small one. Like, go pick up a frog or something. Amanda simply scoffed and, whatever, Peter. Anyway, Charlotte, I think it's a great idea. Charlotte, though, thought Peter might be onto something. So, on the way back from school, what did she do? She scoured the back roads and alleyways, just looked down each one, and if it looked safe, she did a quick run down the alley to see maybe a stray dog is down here, maybe someone left a pet down here, a stray cat. And she was digging through a little bit of trash to the side, thinking maybe the dog or cat had crawled into this cardboard box, when she heard scratching. And she thought, ooh, this is my chance. So she slowly eased over to the sound of the scratching. Step by step, as she got closer, it was tiny. It must be a kitten, or maybe a puppy, but they weren't making any noise. And then as she got closer, she thought she could hear what sounded like little whimpers. She moved the box over and there was a very large rat. Caught in a trap. As soon as she threw that box off there, the rat went into full panic mode, started flailing around, screeching. The small whimpers turned into very high-pitched cries of a creature now caught and struggling to get away from what it thought was going to eat it. Charlotte has never really been disgusted by animals. Just went, oh, Man, I thought you were a puppy or a kitten or something. Oh well, can't very well leave you like that, can we? And she looked around for something to pry open the bar on the rat trap with. She looked to her left. She looked to her right. And out of the corner of her eye, she saw a little bit of rusty rebar sticking out of the trash pile she'd been examining earlier. And she walked over and she took it. But she wrapped her hand in her shirt first, very cautious, and kind of notched it under the rat trap and said, "Now, when I let you out, you better not attack me, because I'm almost certain that you've got rabies." And she pried that bar up, and the rat ran away and turned around and looked her back in the eye, and she thought, huh, that actually felt really good. And then the rat just didn't move. And then darted away. Charlotte smiled to herself and said, maybe that's what I can do. Maybe I'll help rescue animals. Yeah, rescuing animals. That's a great idea. And she walked out of the alleyway and walked home. The next day, she thought she'd double up on her effort to help this little rat. She freed him, but he only got into that little trap because he was looking for food in the first place. So she decided, I'm going to bring just a little bag of cheese with me. No big deal. And she went to school, played out her day, told her friends what happened. They advised her not to feed the rat, but she didn't care. It's not like it was going to attack her for it. She was just going to leave it where the trap was and move on with her day. And so she did. And she noticed the next day that it was eaten. So she kept leaving it there. And for probably a week, she kept leaving little pieces of cheese where this rat had been trapped before. And about 2 days after a week's anniversary of their little visit, when she got back there, the rat was just sitting there, in that spot, as though it's expecting her. She kind of looked around and looked down the alleyway. There was a garbage man doing his civic duty, being a very kind gentleman, and taking care of the schlock and garbage that everybody leaves behind. She didn't really want to bother the man, or make him worry about the fact that there was a rat, currently not even 5 feet from him. But she also wasn't going to make the rat wait. So she pulled out the cheese, and the rat made a couple steps towards her, and she said, "Oh, no, no, no. You stay down there. I'm just going to throw the cheese to you." And she threw the cheese to the rat. And no sooner had the rat gotten about halfway through the cheese, the garbage man closed the lid with a ferocious slam, and the rat scurried off in Charlotte's direction. She jumped. She didn't scream, but she should have, because the rat scurried right up her leg and onto her shoulder. It crawled into her hood, and it stayed there, silent. The garbage man looked at her and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, miss." And Charlotte said, "Oh, no, it's fine. There's just... Never mind. I'm going to go home now." And she started walking away, not wanting the garbage man to attack the rat. As soon as she got out of sight, she immediately felt everything on her spine crawl up her skin. Her hair stood up on end, and she couldn't help but twitch and throw herself around, and she finally unleashed into a spasm of fits trying to get this rat out of her hood without even raising her arms. And eventually the rat crawled out and fell down, and it just sat there on the ground and looked at her almost as though she had offended it. And she kind of released one sob, and she went back a couple steps, and she said, "What was that? I told you to stay away from me." The rat just looked at her quizzically, almost as though it wanted more food. It had finished the cheese while it was in her hood. Now it wanted more. She kind of just stared at the rat. I guess it might be kind of cute. And the rat started stepping towards her. And she went, oh, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. Nope, nope. And she took off running. The next day, she still brought cheese for the rat. And when she got there, the rat was waiting for her. And this time, it tried to run up and get the cheese itself. And she said, no. I can't just have you crawling up all over me like that. I mean, I'm sure that you mean me no harm, but that's a little much for me. The rat just stared at her, unable to comprehend English. And she stared back at the rat and thought, what am I doing? This is a wild, random rat, and I am sitting here talking to it. And she looked down at it again, and she said, I guess maybe it's not that wild. She tossed the rat the cheese, and she took off and turned around and started heading home. The rat began to follow her. Every time she turned around, the rat paused. Almost as though if it stood perfectly still, she wouldn't notice the fact that it was still about a foot away from her. She took 3 steps, paused and turned. There's the rat, frozen in time. Took 5 steps, stopped and turned. There's the rat, suspended in the same spot. She took off on a sprint for about 10 seconds, turned around, and the rat didn't even bother freezing this time. It just kind of scurried, got about a foot away, and then froze. She said, oh no. I mean, I know it'd be hard to explain a puppy or a cat following me home. I kind of explained to my parents that I might be looking for one. They were already mad about that. A rat following me home? Oh, man. What am I going to do? And she began to walk home, and the rat began to follow at a distance, and she turned around and said, stop following me. The rat still couldn't comprehend English language, and got about its foot distance, and kept doing its thing. She took off at a dead sprint, didn't give the rat any time to catch up, and got home and closed the door. She didn't hate the rat. She just didn't want its dirty, grubby body all over her. It was, unfortunately, a wild rat. It was a little bit dirty, but she didn't want it to have to starve or get trapped. I guess I still can bring it food, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And then she had an idea. She went to her dad, and she said, hey, Pa, do you still have any old leather belts that you don't like? And he said, well, yeah. Go ahead and just pull the one off of my little hook hanger there. The one with the black stripe on it. Yeah, I heard that one a little while back. I haven't worn it since. It's not very professional. She says, thank you. Takes it and runs off. Then she went to her little brother's room. And she said, hey, little bro, you've got those old Nerf dart pouches, right? And he said, yeah, they hook right into your belt. She said, could I trade you for one? The little brother said, trade me what? So Charlotte went back to her room, grabbed one of her favorite necklaces, a shark tooth necklace, went back to her brother and said, you can have this shark tooth necklace if I can have one of those pouches. And he said, deal, I've got so many anyway. And he snatched the shark tooth necklace and handed her the pouch and looked at her as though she was crazy for even mentioning that trade. Charlotte, however, knew exactly what she was doing. She went back to her room. It took a little bit of resizing and a little bit of button adding and a little bit of sewing, but after a while, she was able to create a small pouch. It was lined with blankets, using the dart pouch that her brother had given her. It had a little bit of snippets of blankets in there. It was a cozy little pouch, and she even put some cardboard on it to make sure that it wouldn't squish too easy. Then she attached it to the belt and sewed it down so that it wouldn't slide all around. The next day, She brought a little bit of cheese with her. She put the belt out with the cheese in it, and she let the rat eat out of it. Then, the same the next day. And she brought the belt a little bit closer every single time, until eventually she walked towards the rat, nothing in her hands, and she said, "Okay, you've done this before. He didn't hurt you. Just open the pouch." And she popped open the little button, and the rat smelled the cheese, and it looked up at her almost like, "Really? You're gonna let me?" And oh boy, it bounded up her leg, jumped right into the pouch, and it sat there in that little blanketed warm pouch and ate cheese. And she looked down and she said, "Rat pouch. Perfect." She said, "Okay, little buddy, you just hang on 1 sec. I'll bring you right back tomorrow, I promise." And she popped the little button on top, looked at him through the see-through mesh that she had sewn into the top, perfect air holes for him to breathe, and she ran off to the apartment, and she said, "Mom, Dad, you remember our old fish?" They kind of looked at her, nervous to explain. "Yes, we do." "Well, can I just have the bowl?" The parents looked at each other, and then breathed a sigh of relief, realizing they didn't have to explain the sudden death of the fish to their daughter. They said, "Yeah, go ahead, take the bowl. There's the stuff that was inside, it's all under the cabinet there." She took all that stuff, and right before she got into her room, the door was halfway closed. Her father said, "Hey, why do you even need that stuff?" And she said, "Oh, just you wait." She pulled the bowl out, set it on her desk, and then she took some wood shavings. She tossed them in the bowl. She put a little water bowl in there, and she thought, "Man, I'm actually going to have to go to the store for this, aren't I?" Okay, fine. And she took off running back out, and she said, "Mom, Dad, I'm running to the store." And they called back to her, "To get what?" And she said, "You'll see." Her mother was in the middle of saying, "No, I won't," when she had already closed the door and had bolted off. She ran to the local pet store. It wasn't more than 5 minutes away. The center of town was always bustling, but it was always close to home, so the noise was natural. And she got herself a little rodent feeder, a little rodent water. What it was called? Water lick? Either way. Little rodent bottle. And actual pellets, as the pencil shavings that she had used for wood shavings probably weren't going to suffice. She got some food. She got a little rat toy. And she put it all in there. And she got home, stuck everything in the bowl, and then let the rat out into the rather large fish bowl, more like a tank. And he kind of paced around for a second, and then he smelled the food. He walked over and he started eating the food, and he seemed pretty content. So Charlotte went and got Mom or Dad and said, "Mom, Dad, take a look at this." Her mother just stared. Her father screamed and ran out of the room. And her mother said, Did you bring a rat home?" And she said, "Yeah, but look, I totally trained it." And her mother said, "No." And that was that. She did actually have to take the rat home to its little trash area, and she let him go, but he seemed much happier out here. And she said, "I guess I really can't just take you off the street, huh? Well, I could, but, my parents are going to stop me." The rat just kind of stared at her. She gave it the rest of the cheese, and it sat there contentedly by her and ate, and it went to go crawl in the little pocket, and she said, "No, I can't." But actually, I promise I'll still come visit you, but if I come back every day, will you do a favor for me? I just realized none of my friends know I have a rat in my pouch yet. She looked at the rat with a sly grin and kind of patted the side of the pouch. The rat jumped in, and she looked off towards the apartment complex and said, I think I know a fun way to scare him. That's the end. We'll see if that was any good, but I don't know. If you're listening to this, if you're me, thanks for listening, me, because I know you're listening because you had to listen to the whole thing. If you're someone other than me, that's astounding. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening far more than I appreciate me listening. And I hope you have a wonderful life and a wonderful day.